On December 9th, 2019, the most recent and seemingly final content update arrived for Payday 2 on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Containing a bunch of content such as the Diamond Heist and Brooklyn Bank Heist, the Crime Spree game mode, and several other features and weapons, this update was a pretty good update and one that console players have been waiting a long time for, with Crime Spree in particular being a heavily requested feature. And yet on that same day, the pleasant mood was brought down by a post called Winds of Change Console Edition that confirmed that Payday 2 would continue to have disparity between PC and consoles, basically meaning Overkill was saying consoles would probably never get another update unless the situation changed further down the line. And now here we are on the date of recording of the 16th of June 2022, 920 days after this update was released alongside that post. And I've done some videos in the past talking about the console versions, what I think could be next for the console versions, what went wrong with them. But one thing I continue to see in every single Payday 2 PC video I upload is what's happening with console. Is this DLC ever coming to console? Will console ever get another update? It's a question I get asked over and over and over again. So I thought in this video what we'd do is we'd step back, talk a little bit about the console versions again, revisit what was wrong with them, and talk about if the situation has changed at all several years on from the last update on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. So for context, this will not address Xbox 360 and PS3, those were hard confirmed to be discontinued before the Xbox One and PlayStation versions even released, and we're also not talking about the Switch version. That was separately confirmed to be dead in the water. It was not getting another update because the Switch version was not even developed in-house at Overkill, so Overkill haven't got a clue how to make things for the Nintendo Switch. We're focusing here purely on the two platforms that got the most DLC content updates over time, Xbox One and PlayStation 4. So without any further ado, my name is Red Archer Live, welcome back to the channel, and today let's talk about the situation with Payday 2 on consoles in 2022. Roll the intro. So like I expressed in the intro, I want to establish where the console versions are up to right now with Payday 2 and whether the situation has changed in the last few years since the previous update was released. On the 19th of July 2020, I released a video called What Went Wrong with Payday 2 on Console, something I mentioned briefly in the intro. It was a video essay that was designed to explore all the different things that led to the problems on the console versions of Payday 2, because it wasn't knowledge that was commonly put out, it was things you had to try and pick up from different reports, different forums, and things that different people had said. So my aim was to concise all that information down and try and talk about it in an accessible way for people who didn't understand the behind the scenes drama. And in that video there were three key issues: financial problems, a lack of staff, and the game engine itself. They were the three main reasons that I believe Payday 2 on consoles did not work out the way it should have done compared to the version on PC. So what I want to do is use those very same chapters again. I want to talk about each of those three parts, discuss what's changed since then, and at the end we're going to talk about Payday 3 in a more concise way because I want to explain why I think things will be different for Payday 3, especially now we're really nearing the release of that game in 2023. So you'll notice some similarities to that previous video essay if you've seen it, but I wanted to try and modernize it and talk about how things had changed since then. So if you didn't watch that previous video essay, feel free to, but you won't need to because I will explain the key things in detail in this video anyway. So let's kick off first with the first topic last time, which was the financial struggles. Back in 2018, Overkill Software and Starbreeze Studios released Overkill's The Walking Dead, a 4-player co-op action game that was meant to emulate Payday 2 in the form of a zombie horde game taking place within Robert Kirkman's Walking Dead universe. It suffered years of developmental hell, being built within a video game engine known as Valhalla, which Overkill did not have the resources to use properly. It was quoted by developers in the past that the engine didn't even have a start button when they first started using it, and after years of trying to build a game in Valhalla, it was decided by the higher-ups at Starbreeze Studios that just 1 year before the game would release, they would scrap everything, start again, and make the game in Unreal Engine. And so it should be to nobody's surprise that when the game did in fact release in 2018, it was met with very poor reception, because what we were getting was a game that had only been developed over the course of about 12 months. Something which Overkill staff commented on anonymously in a Eurogamer investigation at the time, stating that they were actually just surprised to release a game that they could start on the Steam marketplace, people could actually download and play. They didn't think they'd even get that far in the 12 months. And what followed was a financial cataclysm for Overkill Software and Starbreeze Studios. Their former CEO, Bo Anderson, had made a whole series of poor financial investments, details I don't need to get into too much in this video because it is old history now, things have changed a little bit, but he made some very bad investments in certain studios, in VR, things that Starbreeze Studios just weren't in the right place to be invested in when they're a studio that were only really mainly known for publishing Payday 2. And to make matters worse, all of this took place when Payday 2 had just come to the end of its life cycle in 2018, having released the White House heist for players for free on the PC version of Payday 2. That was the end of Payday Payday 2 story, and as far as Overkill are concerned, was the last final content drop for the game, so they could move on and instead put all their efforts into Overkill's The Walking Dead. So with Payday 2 sunsetted and Overkill's The Walking Dead getting a very poor financial and critical response, Starbreeze had to file for something called reconstruction. It's a process you have to enter as a company when you're about to go bankrupt, but you need to pause your assets, try and figure if there's a way out of your situation, and then come out of it, pay your debts, and try and get the business back into financial success again. The reconstruction process lasted for an entire year and involved a lot of financial changes within Starbreeze Studios. A lot of games rights were sold back to the original publishers, and Starbreeze decided that its main goal was to focus on developing and publishing games in-house, the main one being Payday 3. Yes, I do see the irony in that statement, because Payday 3 isn't being self-published, Koch Media are publishing it, but the general point is that in the end, Starbreeze want to be developing and publishing their own games without any external help, because they'll have the finances to support that. And the only reason that Starbreeze Studios left that situation intact was down to the work of the CEO, Mikhail Nermark, who took over the position when Bo Anderson departed timely at the start of reconstruction, and held the position for 2 years until October 2020 when he resigned, citing personal reasons. It was down to Mikhail that the company survived, and he managed to get Starbreeze into a position where it could come back from the crisis it had found itself in and get Payday 3 out the door to bring some real financial security back to the company. Since then, Starbreeze has received some very lucrative cash injections from its investors, including a 250 million Swedish krona cash injection, which currently equates to roughly £20 million, as well as a co-publishing deal that has been signed with Koch Media to bring in some more money and allow Overkill Software and Starbreeze Studios to develop the best Payday 3 possible, get it out the door, and generate some money for the company. In the meantime, however, Payday 2 on console was starting to receive fewer and fewer updates, and that was because these updates were being made during the reconstruction period. To be honest, looking back, I'm surprised we even got any console updates during that reconstruction period, purely because Starbreeze weren't able to do too much due to the freezing of their assets. It's honestly a wonder we got the update in December 2019 that we did. But once Starbreeze left the reconstruction period in the same month that they released that console update, they made it very, very clear that they needed to only make logical financial decisions going forward. And the truth of the matter was, a lot of console players had already left Payday 2 behind because of the lack of updates. PC was the platform that was generating the most money for Overkill, and they knew that because it was the most up-to-date and most expansive version of the game, and it was the one that the developers were most used to building content for. The main reason for that being down to the game engine, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later. And so this was one of several reasons that Payday 2 on consoles saw the termination of updates, with the reassurance that Overkill would return and release more console content in the future if they were able to do so. So 2.5 years on, has the financial situation improved at all with Payday 3 on the horizon? Well, despite Starbreeze leaving reconstruction and making some decent income from their Payday 2 DLCs they're releasing on PC as part of the Silk Road, City of Gold, and Texas Heat campaigns, they're actually still making a loss. The company lost 18 million Swedish krona approximately in this first quarter from January to March, which roughly converts to a £1.4 million loss. So the company is still very much making losses quarter on quarter. It's Payday 3 that is hopefully going to make the big change for them. I mean, if Payday 3 doesn't do that, Starbreeze might not survive another financial crisis. Now, the main problem with the console versions of Payday 2 is that a huge chunk of the content is free content that's missing on the game. Granted, we have got the most recent DLC updates now from Silk Road onwards, but there's a huge chunk of free heists from the end of Payday 2's lifecycle, including Reservoir Dogs, No Mercy, the White House, as well as the ability to wear custom suits, gloves, the Infamy page overhaul. A whole bunch of free content is missing on consoles, and so if Overkill take the time and resources and obviously money paying the staff to make this stuff, it's not going to return them any investment, it's only going to cost them more money. And I have seen comments in the past of people saying that they would happily pay for the content if it meant it came over to console, regardless of the fact that it was free on PC. There are several reasons as to why Overkill wouldn't do this. First off, to release content that was originally free as paid DLC on another platform is just morally incorrect. It could be financially murky from a business standpoint, they might not even be allowed to do it. But on top of that, even if they did that, who's to say people would buy it? Let alone the fact that you would annoy some console players by releasing that stuff as paid DLC when it shouldn't have been. You've also got to remember that even back in 2019, a lot of console players had already begun to give up on Payday 2. They'd moved on. That was it. Fast forward 2.5 years, how many people actually play Payday 2 on consoles now? We can't get the figures, but I have to be honest, I don't imagine there's that many people. A game that has not had a proper content update for 2.5 years is going to struggle to bring in high numbers compared to the PC version, which gets a new DLC every single month. month. So when you combine the fact that a lot of players have moved on and might not come back even if Payday 2 got an update now because it's been so long, you've then got to add into that mix that if people do come back and find that free content on PC is being charged for on consoles, that will seal a nail in the coffin even more. Overkill could put the effort in, charge for the updates, and then not get any sales anyway. So unfortunately, finances are a very big reason why console hasn't been getting updates in the last 2.5 years, and judging from their current financial reports, that's not going to change. The second port of call in my video was the staff. I argued in my 2020 video essay that Starbreeze's staff numbers had dropped by roughly a half. 60 people were laid off out of the roughly 240 staff members working under Starbreeze Studios, either via Overkill or elsewhere, and after laying off a quarter of their team, that being 60 people as I've said, another roughly 60 people left the studio of their own accord, presumably because they saw that Starbreeze Studios might well have been a sinking ship, and they needed to move their assets elsewhere and try and get a stable income from a company that wasn't throwing its money down the drain. I will link the webpage in the description that allows you to access all these company presentations because they are worth reading through if you want more background information, but the third quarter report in 2020 showcased that 122 employees were employed under Starbreeze Studios. Again, roughly half of what they had before the reconstruction began in 2018. And at that time, approximately 80 of the developers were working on developing content for Payday 2, Payday 3, and Payday Crime War. 3 different Payday games under the franchise. At that time, I argued that most of the staff were going to be focused on either Payday 3, Payday Crime War, or Payday 2 on PC because it was evident that people weren't really talking about Payday 2 on console, they weren't giving us many updates, and by the time I made that video, 7 months had passed since the previous update, and Overkill Goris, the staff member that used to update us on where console updates were up to, had vanished. And that didn't change. It's been 2.5 years, and I don't think he's posted at all in the Steam forum. I think it's safe to say he either was relocated in Starbreeze or left the company. We don't know for sure, but we never saw him again, so I just don't know. So how have things changed with the staff numbers over the last 2.5 years? Well, the 2022 Q1 financial report for Starbreeze does not actually share how many staff members are employed at the company. However, the Q4 report for 2021 does. So while this is roughly 6 months out of date now, Starbreeze had 138 employees at the closing of 2021, which means that in over a year, Starbreeze only gained an extra 16 employees. Now, of course, it's fair to assume that will have changed in the roughly 6 months since this presentation was shared, but if we try to predict where that will be now, after over a year they only gained 6 employees, so if we keep that trend going, you'd be lucky if they hired another 10 people. We're probably looking at 150 employees or less working at Starbreeze Studios. Previously, about 2/3 of those were assigned to development. I'd wager a similar amount will still be working on video games at Starbreeze and Overkill. So how have things changed with where the staff members are working? Well, Payday Crime War is no longer being developed at Overkill Software. It's been sent off to PopReach, a developer with experience in mobile games that has taken the pressure off of Overkill and is handling the reins for the release of that game. Payday 2 on PC, as you all no doubt know, is getting new DLC updates every single month. And Payday 2 on console, well, if we'd had any updates on here, I wouldn't be making this video, would I? So, my personal belief, even though I obviously can't prove this, is that all the staff members are either working on Payday 2 on PC or Payday 3. Payday 2 on PC, as we discussed in the financial chapter, is vital for making as much money for Starbreeze as possible, and even though they're still making losses, imagine how much the losses would be if they weren't releasing paid DLC on Payday 2's PC version. It would be so much worse. So they've assigned the members that are necessary to make content for the Payday 2 PC version, and I'd wager that beyond that, everyone's been pushed to Payday 3. The game could be releasing in less than a year now. We don't know when in 2023 the game is going to release. With a 2023 release pinned for Payday 3, presuming that's not going to be delayed, we could have the game in our hands in 6 months' time, or it could be 18 months. We don't actually know specifically when it's coming, but we're getting to that point now where as many people need to be working on this game as possible to make it the best Payday experience possible. So while Starbreeze have learned from their mistakes, they've not hired a ton of people that they can't afford to pay with their financial issues. At the same time, they're using the employees that they've got very wisely and putting them towards the most financially lucrative things in the company, that being Payday 2 PC DLC and Payday 3's future development. As such, I no longer believe that even a single person is working on development for Payday 2 on consoles, tying into the financial stuff that I've just talked about, because it isn't lucrative enough for them. I don't imagine anyone's even touching it anymore, which just further cements that I don't believe there will be a future content update for Payday 2. The third chapter of my video essay talked about the game engine and why that was causing a big problem for Payday 2. Diesel is a game engine that is not well built. It is a racing engine from the early 2000s that at this point does not handle a game of Payday 2's caliber very well. A lot of people on PC argue about the optimization being very poor. Some heists just do not run well even on good performing PCs. But as you might expect, I can't really give much more of an argument on that point because in 2.5 years, nothing has changed. It's not like they changed the game engine of Payday 2 in the last 2.5 years. They're not going to be able to do that. That's it. Payday 2 is still on diesel, and it still creates the big problems that Payday 2 has. The biggest one, however, being that you are not able to easily port content over from PC to consoles, whereas typically when you develop a game on something like Unreal Engine, which, by the way, Payday 3 is being built on, you're able to build it for any platform in mind, but then transfer that content to work on any console you need. So you could build something for PC and quite easily have it work on Xbox or PlayStation, and you can very easily interact with all three versions and make changes that would apply to all of them. Diesel does not allow for that. If you build something on PC, you could port some very small basic fibers over onto consoles, but a lot of it has to be rebuilt from the ground up, and that's why it took so long for a lot of even the most basic features to make their way over from Payday 2's PC version to its console version. These technical difficulties are just another reason why Overkill can't assign the money and the staff to work on it, because it just isn't an easy undertaking anyway. Never mind that they don't have the staff to do it, never mind the fact that they wouldn't get the financial returns they need from it, it's just not something that's going to be easily developed anyway. So while it makes for a very short chapter, unfortunately nothing has changed with regards to the game engine, and it remains another big issue with why Payday 2 didn't get the updates it needs on consoles. So having reflected upon the three big reasons why Payday 2's console updates had suffered so much over the last few years, I hope that it's fair for everyone to see now that not really a great deal has unfortunately changed in the 2.5 years since Payday 2's last console update. I wanted to do this video to explore how things might have adapted and changed, and while some things have changed behind the scenes at Overkill and Starbreeze Studios, they haven't changed in a way that's beneficial to console players. The focus in the studio now has to be on Payday 3, and whether you like it or not, that is the wise decision. I don't like it at all myself personally. I would much rather be playing Payday 2 on consoles. It's something that people seem to be constantly surprised about, but if I had the choice, I'd still choose to make console content as opposed to PC content. I'd choose console any day of the week, because it's what I always play my games on. However, after following their financial news, their business dealings and all this stuff for the last few years, I do get it logically. I understand where their heads are at, and I get why they can't make console content, and I hope that through this video, you will all understand it too. It's not built to be some kind of big Overkill sympathizer, and Overkill can do no wrong, because of course they do wrong. We've seen it in the past. It's designed basically to make you realise that Overkill have not got some big hatred against consoles. It's just that Payday 2 has never been built well for consoles. It fell at the first hurdle with the bad game engine, and as things got worse for Overkill with money and with staff, it's just made things 10 times worse. You've got three very big nails in a very big coffin. So to conclude on Payday 2, I do not believe we will ever see another console update, which is something that I have kind of said in the past, and I want to say it with definitive confidence now. Overkill made that Winds of Change console post and said that if they ever could return, they would do so, but let's be fair, they're not going to do that. They're not going to return to Payday 2 on consoles. There's no point financially. They haven't got the time and resources for it. I really wish that at some point they just say for sure that they're not coming back, because I think that some people have read that post and thought that it meant that there was a chance and they should hold out hope for content. At this point, there's no hope in my opinion. How does that affect Payday 3 though? I know that a lot of you are going to be thinking about Payday 3, much like what I said in the last video when I did this in 2020, and say, well, why should I trust Payday 3 will be any different? Why is it that Payday 3 is going to be so much better for consoles than Payday 2? And it's a fair criticism. I can imagine a lot of people feeling that, and I can't really blame you. However, the biggest change is that Payday 3 is being developed on Unreal Engine. While all three of the things I've talked about, the money, the staff, and the engine were important, the engine is the thing that set it off badly at the beginning. If you'd worked on an engine with Payday 2 that could easily allow the porting of content, it would have made everything 10 times easier. Do you really think that when Rockstar developed Grand Theft Auto, or when Bethesda developed Elder Scrolls or Fallout games, do you really think they're building the game 3 times over every time? No, they're building it, and it's working on all three consoles. Bethesda's "it just works" obviously means something different, but that's beside the point. By building Payday 2 on diesel, Overkill fell at the first hurdle, and it was hard to recover once the money and staff problems started to rear their heads. With Payday 3, choosing a game engine that allows for content to be ported easily between the platforms means that Overkill can't fall at that same hurdle again. They're using an engine that allows for all updates to be released easily on all of the relevant platforms, and that means that going forward, there is no excuse for Payday 3 not being up to date on consoles compared to PC. And one thing that I've said constantly in the past based on finance and previous evidence is that Overkill are not going to confirm they're going to release Payday 3 on consoles if they really think they're going to mess it up again. Think really hard about how many times console players have been let down by Overkill, and think about all the trouble they've made for their own back in constantly letting people down and constantly failing their promises. Overkill might be a company that have made mistakes in the past, but I don't personally believe they would allow themselves to make that mistake with consoles one more time. I think if they really thought there was going to be that chance again, they just wouldn't release it on consoles. A lot of the decisions you have to remember come down to the former CEO, Bo Anderson. He did not have the right idea with how Starbreeze could spend its money. That's just a fact. Investing in VR in a company that was most known for a bank robbing game, it was a stupid idea. Having CEOs after him such as the brilliant Mikhail Nermark, God rest his soul, and their current CEO Tobias Hergrian, which I don't think I pronounced right, and I have tried my best to, especially when I interviewed him, so sorry Tobias if you're watching this and I've said it wrong again. But having CEOs like that who better know how to manage the company and the assets they've got means that they're only going to do things that make logical sense. So having a better game engine and better people behind the curtain means that there is now no excuse for Payday 3 to be any different on consoles to how it will be on PC, obviously bar modding, because modding is a different situation, and let's face it, is not relevant for a console discussion. So I hope that this video has not only brought people up to speed who follow my channel for a while, but also informed people who are newer to my channel about why consoles have gone so wrong for Payday 2, and on top of that, explained how things have changed in the 900 plus days since the last console update, and also briefly discussed how that will impact the future with Payday 3, and why I think this time Overkill might just get it right. As a lot of you no doubt know, the main reason Overkill reached out to me to become a partner was because I was the console guy for Payday 2. I was the person who talked about console updates. Most Payday 2 content creators, with the greatest of love and respect to them, many of them are actually friends of mine now, they don't care about consoles because they play on PC, and that's where the bigger audience is. I made the effort to talk about consoles, and I did a lot of console videos for several years. Obviously, I've had critique in more recent years for abandoning console videos and just going PC, although abandoning isn't really the fairest word because I haven't been able to make videos on a version that hasn't been getting any updates. If there were ever console updates, I'd be talking about them. But if you want to hear more about my personal involvement in Payday 2's console videos, I did upload a video about it last year. Feel free to go and check that out. It's linked on screen and in the description. But that's the reason I've come back to make this video now, because I do still want to acknowledge the console players, because you guys are still out there waiting for news, and I wanted to reaffirm whether it's actually worth holding out hope for the future of this game. This video is one that's been a long time coming, and I'm really glad to talk about consoles every now and again. I only really do these when I have an idea that I think is worth discussing, because I just don't want to keep making console videos that aren't needed. But if you have enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you dropped a thumbs up on it to show me you liked it and would like to see more. And if you happen to be new around here and you've got to the end of this video, please consider dropping it a subscribe. It will be greatly appreciated, and it means you'll never miss out on any future content for Payday 2 or Payday 3 on consoles and PC. If you want to find ways to support me, you've got my Patreon link in the description, which I keep promising is going to get an overhaul, and that's coming very, very soon. You've got my merch store with some Payday and non-Payday themed designs around myself, my content, and my community. And you can check me out on Twitter and Instagram at RedArcherLive. You can check out my Discord server in the description down below, and check out my Twitch to watch me stream most weeknights at twitch.tv/RedArcherLive. But beyond that, thank you all very much for watching. I will see you all very soon with a brand new video. Until then, look after yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you all soon.